But in 2001, suddenly the media paid some interest.
In 1974, the largest radio telescope on Earth aimed its signal toward the stars. From a remote facility in Arecibo, Puerto Rico, scientists sent a tightly packed, high-frequency broadcast toward the globular cluster M13, some 25,000 light-years away. It was a bold gesture. Not a call, but a declaration. The message, encoded in binary, contained information about our species, our atomic structure, DNA, population, and even the shape of the antenna transmitting it. It was called the Arecibo message. No one expected a reply. It was meant more for posterity than contact. But in August of 2001, something appeared. In a field in Chilbolton, Hampshire, UK, just beside a radio observatory 2, massive crop formations were discovered. The first was a rectangular block of data, eerily similar in format to the original Arecibo transmission. The second appeared days later, a complex face, pixelated but unmistakably humanoid. The data rectangle, when decoded, mimicked the layout of the original message, except for key changes. The atomic numbers were different. The DNA strand had more helices. The population figure was larger. And the image of the sender, not a human, but a short figure with an enlarged skull. It was either the most mathematically perfect crop hoax ever made, or an answer, one written not in sound, but in wheat. And in the decades since, no one has replicated it. Not without inconsistencies. Not at that scale. So, the question remains, did something answer the Arecibo message? And if so, why choose a field? The message was sent on the 16th of November, 1974, from the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico, a scientific marvel of its time. The dish, over 300 meters wide, was nestled in a natural sinkhole, its structure suspended by massive cables and towers above the jungle canopy. That broadcast lasted just 3 minutes, beamed toward the Hercules constellation at 2,380 millihertz, a frequency chosen for its low background noise and penetrative power. The broadcast was symbolic. The scientists, by Dr. Frank Drake and supported by Carl Sagan, knew the odds of reaching intelligent life in M13 were infinitesimal. By the time the signal arrived, they reasoned. The stars might have moved, but the gesture mattered. It was humanity's first intentional attempt to say, "We are here." Decades passed. Then, on the 19th of August, 2001, a field near the Chilbolton Radio Telescope in southern England became the center of global attention. A crop formation had appeared overnight, in a rectangular shape resembling a digital block. Unlike traditional circular designs, this one mimicked the structure of binary code rows and columns, etched with astonishing precision. Just 1 year earlier, in the same field, another controversial crop image had formed. A face, pixelated and flat when viewed from the ground, but photographic in quality from above. This new rectangular pattern drew immediate comparison to the original Arecibo message. Side by side, the visual structure aligned almost perfectly. Only the content had changed. Skeptics called it an elaborate prank. But the field in question had no tire tracks, no broken stalks outside the pattern, and the level of detail, including modulation at the stalk level, suggested a technique more advanced than boards and ropes. Chilbolton itself wasn't just any field. It was government property, an active research site with limited civilian access, which raised a more troubling question. If someone had created the formation manually, how did they do it undetected? And if no one had, then who or what left it there? On first glance, the crop formation appeared to be just another curiosity in a long line of mysterious agricultural patterns. But once researchers began to compare it, line by line, to the original Arecibo message, the unease began to grow. The layout was nearly identical, a grid of binary code forming specific visual blocks. The numbers 1 through 10, the atomic numbers of key elements, a representation of DNA, a rough human figure, the population of Earth, and the solar system, each element encoded in the 1974 broadcast. But in this field of wheat outside Chilbolton, the return message differed. The atomic numbers included an additional element, siliconin element, theorized by some as a base for non-carbon life. The DNA strand shown was altered, appearing as a triple helix instead of a double. The figure depicted had a larger head, broader eyes, and a shorter body. The planetary system marked a different configuration, not our solar system, but one in which the third, fourth, and fifth planets were highlighted, and the transmitting antenna, originally depicting Arecibo's dish, had been replaced by a new shape unknown, complex, and curved like a fractal array. The implications were staggering. Had someone or something decoded our message, translated it, and sent a tailored reply? Or was it an elaborate spoof designed to provoke exactly that reaction? The second formation that appeared just a few days later complicated things further. This time, it was a face, not drawn with lines, but with thousands of subtle variations in stock alignment, creating light and shadow visible only from above. The technique mimicked dot matrix printing, a technology not easily replicated in a field. The face itself was humanoid, but not human. Sunken cheeks, enlarged eyes, a flattened nose, a calculated, unmistakable presence. Scientists and crop circle researchers descended on the site. Drone footage was taken. No signs of human entry were found. No footprints, no flattened trails leading in or out. The formation was flawless. Some theorized microwave technology had been used heating the stalks from above, but no equipment, no signatures, no evidence ever surfaced. It wasn't just the content of the message that disturbed observers. It was the question it implied. If this was an answer, then someone had heard us, and instead of replying through the stars, they responded from beneath our skies. The Chilbolton crop formation wasn't just a picture in a field, it was a data structure pressed into wheat, measuring over 200 feet in length and 100 feet wide. It was laid out with such meticulous accuracy that even minor deviations would have rendered the binary code unreadable. But the pattern held. The stalks weren't trampled. They were bent, each one carefully curved at the base, not broken, as if softened and then repositioned. Upon inspection, researchers found that the plants remained alive and growing. This contradicted typical human-made formations, where stalks are crushed under boards and boots, leaving visible trauma. More curiously, the pattern shifted subtly in shading under sunlight, creating optical depth similar to pixel dithering. Some speculated this effect was intentional, kind of low-resolution encoding visible only from a specific height. When captured by aerial photography, the formation's alignment snapped into clarity, revealing its message like a billboard for satellites. The figure in the message, the sender, was, perhaps, the most disturbing element. Unlike the stick figure human in the original Arecibo message, the crop figure bore a head disproportionately large to its body, with a broad skull and short stature. It mirrored common depictions of extraterrestrial beings found in folklore and abduction accounts. But here, it wasn't a fantasy or hallucination. It was pressed into wheat with machine-like symmetry. And then there was the technology glyph, where the Arecibo dish was shown in 1974. The crop reply included a shape unlike any known terrestrial transmitter. Analysts traced it as a three-dimensional fractal structure, self-similar, recursive, possibly theoretical. It was as if the sender was not only answering, but introducing themselves with something far more advanced. For believers, this wasn't art. It was a handshake, a visual exchange between two intelligences using shared logic, mathematics, and symmetry. For skeptics, it was a feat of engineering so impressive it demanded explanation, even if not from the stars. But the fact remained. No team ever came forward to claim responsibility. No replica matched its detail, and it has never appeared again, not like this. The formation sparked immediate division in the scientific community. Skeptics pointed to the long history of crop circles in England, often exposed as human-made hoaxes involving boards, rope, and a well-rehearsed team. They argued that, while the Chilbolton designs were technically impressive, they didn't prove anything beyond human ingenuity. But others mathematicians, engineers, and even some radio astronomers weren't so quick to dismiss. The problem wasn't just what was made, it was how. The Arecibo reply demonstrated exact knowledge of the original message's format, encoding structure, and symbolic logic. To spoof it convincingly, the hoaxer would have needed to deeply understand the 1974 transmission, possess the capability to translate it into a mirrored binary format, and execute it over hundreds of square meters without error, in the span of a single night, with no signs of access or disturbance. And why choose Chilbolton? Not a random farm, but an active radio observatorium of the few locations in England with the capacity to interpret such a signal. Was it coincidence or deliberate placement? Some theorists suggested the formation wasn't drawn in at all, but printed through unknown means. The bending of the stalks without breakage, the consistent curvature, the electromagnetic anomalies measured in the area afterward, these weren't common in human circle making. And then came the broader questions. Why answer through crops instead of radio? Was it symbolic? Or did they choose a medium that would bypass military channels and be seen by the public first? Or, as the darker interpretations suggest, was it not a reply at all, but a test? A signal dropped just within reach to observe how we react. 20 years have passed since Chilbolton. No message of equal clarity has appeared since. The field has gone quiet. Arecibo itself was decommissioned, then collapsed. But the pattern remains. Recorded, preserved, unclaimed, and in the silence that follows, one final question echoes. If that really was an answer, was it the only one we'll receive? Or just the first? Everyone talks about Area 51. It's the symbol of secrecy, the punchline of alien conspiracies, the desert fortress shrouded in military denial. But what if Area 51 was just a distraction? In 1989, a man named Bob Lazar stepped forward, claiming he worked not at Area 51, but at a smaller, hidden facility south of it. He called it Site S4, located near the dry lake bed of Papoose Lake, deep within the Nevada Test and Training Range. According to Lazar, this base wasn't just secreted, was home to something impossible, recovered alien craft. Lazar described hangars carved into a mountainside, 9 saucer-shaped vehicles stored inside, each with propulsion systems that defied known physics. He claimed he was part of a project attempting to reverse engineer their technology in effort to unlock gravity itself. He talked about element 115 before it was ever synthesized, about briefing documents referencing extraterrestrial biology. Many dismissed him. Some still do, but the details he provided decades ahead of public science have continued to resurface. And recent satellite imagery near Papoose Lake reveals disturbances beneath the terrain, entrances that don't appear on any official map, roads that vanish into nothing, So the question lingers. If Area 51 is the curtain, then what's really hiding behind it? The Nevada Test and Training Range spans over 2 million acres of restricted land larger than some small countries. Much of it is inaccessible to civilians, unmarked on public maps, and patrolled by contractors with shoot-on-sight clearance. Within that stretch of desert lies Groom Lake, home to the infamous Area 51. But to the southwest, past a series of dried salt flats and into the hills near Papoose Lake, the landscape becomes stranger. That's where Bob Lazar said S4 was located. In his 1,989 interview with Las Vegas reporter George Knapp, Lazar was calm, consistent, and eerily specific. He claimed S4 was built into the side of a mountain ridge overlooking the Papoose Dry Lake Betta naturally secluded location, with no infrastructure leading in or out. The facility, he said, was camouflaged. The hangar doors were built at an angle, blending perfectly into the slope of the rock. From the air, they would appear invisible. From the ground, no one could approach without crossing multiple restricted zones, all protected by high surveillance perimeters. At the time, there were no known installations in that region. No roads, no fencing. Even aerial reconnaissance photos showed nothing, just unbroken desert. And yet, Lazar described internal shuttle systems, biometric scanners that read bone density, and guards who never spoke. Years later, investigators returned to the location he described. What they found was curious. Though no official base was visible, modern satellite imaging showed unusual disruptions in the soil heat signatures, geometric subsidence, and straight-line patterns inconsistent with natural erosion. Engineers suggested the possibility of deep underground construction, yet no records exist. No permits, no budget allocations, nothing. The name S4 has never appeared in any official military documentation. It's never been acknowledged. But then again, neither was Area 51 until 2013, which raises a troubling thought. If the government only admits to what it can no longer deny, then what still hides beneath the dust of Papoose Lake? According to Bob Lazar, his work at S4 began with clearance so tight that he didn't even know what he would be working on until the day he arrived. He described being flown from Las Vegas to Groom Lake, then driven south along the desert floor past areas not listed on maps, toward a facility that seemed to rise from the rock itself. Inside, he claimed, was a series of 9 interconnected hangar seats containing a craft that was not built on Earth. One in particular, he said, resembled a flattened sphere. No seams, no rivets, metallic but matte. When touched, its surface was cool. He was assigned to study its propulsion system. He called it a gravity amplifier. It didn't run on conventional fuel. It manipulated space-time itself, bending gravity around it rather than pushing through it. The power source? A stable isotope of element 115, a material not synthesized on Earth until 200,314 years after his claim. He also described security protocols that were excessive even by Black Project standards, biometric scanners that measured hand bone density, escorts between rooms, no open communication between departments, everything compartmentalized. Everything observed. Lazar claimed he once witnessed a test flight. The craft hovered silently, then darted sideways at impossible speed. There was no exhaust, no sound, just sudden, instantaneous motion. He wasn't allowed to record anything. No photographs, no notes, only what he could remember. Years later, amateur observers near Papoose Lake reported strange light-sharp turns, erratic movement, acceleration that defied known physics. These sightings were quickly dismissed by officials as flares or test aircraft, but the patterns matched Lazar's descriptions. He was later discredited tax issues, lack of academic records, no employment history at Los Alamos. But pieces of his story have held up. His name appeared in a once confidential phone directory from the Los Alamos National Lab. Some of the base schematics he drew were later mirrored in declassified aircraft designs, and the location he pinpointed, once ignored as since, shown subtle but growing evidence of disturbance. So if he was lying, how did he know where to look? The object Bob Lazar claimed to study at S4 wasn't just an unidentified craft. It was a machine that rewrote what we thought was possible. He referred to it as the Sport Model, one of 9 vehicles stored within the base, but the one assigned to his division. It was small, around 16 feet in diameter, with a metallic hull that was dull, like brushed stainless steel. It had no visible seams, no welds, no external propulsion system, just a dome, a flattened disc, and 3 hemispherical pods underneath. Inside, the design was disorienting. Curved walls, no sharp edges, and proportions too small for an average adult. Lazar said he had to crouch to move through it. The most baffling component was its reactor. Roughly the size of a basketball, it emitted no heat, no radiation, yet produced power, unlike anything terrestrial. It was fueled by a stable isotope of element 115, which didn't exist in scientific records at the time. Lazar described how the reactor generated its own gravitational field by amplifying waves produced from the element-bending space around the craft, rather than propelling through it. The implications were staggering. If true, the technology could render modern propulsion obsolete. No fuel, no noise, no atmospheric resistance. It wouldn't fly, it would fall forward, pulling the fabric of space with it. But Lazar said he didn't understand the full system. No one did. His role was limited, intentionally isolated from other teams. He was given briefings, however, documents that suggested the craft was not manufactured by humans, that it had been recovered. Some reports, he claimed, mentioned biological and tidy extraterrestrial in origin. The project, he said, wasn't just a study of alien hardware. It was an effort to reverse engineer reality itself. To some, this sounds like science fiction, but others point to patterns. In 2017, the US government acknowledged the existence of black budget programs investigating unidentified aerial phenomena. In 2023, whistleblowers under oath testified about recovered non-human biologics and technology beyond our capability. And still, the government refuses to speak about S4. There are no official photographs, no blueprints, only Lazar's word, and the unsettling possibility that one of the most advanced machines on Earth may not have been built here at all. Bob Lazar's claims have haunted the UFO community for over 3 decades, not because they're easy to believe, but because so many of them were never truly disproven. Skeptics point to gaps in his background, lost transcripts, unverifiable degrees, unclear timelines. They argue that Lazar is a fabricator, someone chasing attention or trying to sell a story. And yet, for a hoaxer, he has remained remarkably consistent. His story hasn't changed in over 30 years. He's never tried to profit from it. In fact, he's avoided the spotlight whenever possible. When asked, he always gives the same answer: "I wish I'd never said anything." Others believe Lazar saw something but misunderstood what it was. That S, the 4th of, may have been part of an experimental aerospace project, and the craft he described were advanced human designs. This theory would be comforting, if not for the mounting evidence that something more unexplainable is at play. In recent years, a new generation of insiders, former military pilots, defense contractors, even intelligence officials have begun saying the quiet part out loud. That there are programs hidden from oversight, focused on retrieving and studying non-human technology. That crashes have happened. That reverse engineering is real. None of them mention S4 directly, but their descriptions echo Lazar's off-world materials, propulsion systems that defy Newtonian physics, security so compartmentalized it borders on paranoia. And there's the geography. Satellite scans near Papoose Lake reveal heat signatures inconsistent with geological activity. Linear temperature increases underground, suggesting large, active subterranean structures. Still, no entry roads. No official explanation. If S4 exists, it's the best-kept secret on Earth. If it doesn't, then Bob Lazar invented an entire physics paradigm, described a real chemical element before science caught up, and predicted secret programs the Pentagon only admitted decades later. So either he's lying, or someone told him the truth. And that might be even stranger. Before Sputnik, before Apollo, before humanity ever launched a single machine into orbit, something was already up there. For more than a century, astronomers, radio operators, and space observers have reported sightings of a strange object circling Earth in a polar orbit trajectory. None of our satellites used until decades after its first detection. It became known by a name whispered in defense briefings and conspiracy forums alike: the Black Knight satellite. Unlike anything launched by known space agencies, the object doesn't follow the orbital paths of weather satellites or military platforms. It's massive, silent, and elusive. Its shape irregular, almost sculptural. It drifts through shadow. It doesn't blink. The mystery began with unexplained radio echoes in the 1890s. It deepened when Nikola Tesla reportedly received a signal he claimed came from another world. In 1954, newspapers published claims that the U.S. Air Force had detected 2 unknown satellites when none were supposed to exist. And in 1998, NASA astronauts aboard the Endeavour captured a series of photographs, images that showed something strange, something artificial, slowly tumbling above Earth's horizon. NASA called it debris. Others weren't so sure, because if the Black Knight isn't ours and isn't theirs, then whose is it? And how long has it been watching? The Black Knight's legend doesn't begin in the space age. It begins long before. In 1899, while experimenting with wireless electricity in Colorado Springs, Nikola Tesla claimed he received a repeating signal that defied natural origin. He described it as rhythmic mathematical. At the time, there were no satellites, no artificial signals bouncing around Earth. Tesla was ridiculed, but decades later, other inventors like Guglielmo Marconi reported similar echoing patterns when testing radio transmissions. Signals that returned seconds later, delayed unnaturally, as if something in orbit were bouncing them back. By the 1920s and 30s, European scientists began documenting what they called long-delayed echoes, LDEs. The delay times were too long to be atmospheric, and too precise to be random. Something was out there, reflecting their broadcasts. Then, in 1954, 3 years before Sputnik newspapers, including the St. Louis Dispatch and the San Francisco Examiner, cited military sources claiming the U.S. Air Force had detected 2 artificial satellites in Earth's orbit. At the time, neither the U.S. nor the Soviet Union had launched anything. The claims faded into background noise until 1960, when the U.S. Navy officially detected a dark object in a retrograde polar orbit. At the time, No known nation could place satellites into such a path. The object's trajectory was unstable. It pulsed radio waves faint, but traceable. The Department of Defense assigned it a code and quietly monitored it. Fast forward to 1998. During the STS-88 mission, aboard the Space Shuttle Endeavour, astronauts were assembling the first modules of the International Space Station. As they worked, cameras captured a series of high-resolution images. Among them, an object tumbling above the Earth. Angular, asymmetrical, not like debris but like a structure. NASA dismissed it as a thermal blanket that had come loose, but analysts noted the object's trajectory didn't match that explanation, and the images sharpened, enhanced showed contours that didn't resemble torn material. Instead, they looked sculpted, deliberate, and the object? It vanished a few days later. No re-entry signature, no decay, just gone. The 1,998 NASA photographs reignited an old obsession. In frame after frame, the object appeared to be moving slowly, tumbling, but maintaining altitude. It cast shadows. Its shape shifted subtly with each image, revealing angular protrusions and folds, almost architectural. Amateur analysts began dissecting every detail, overlaying wireframes, comparing it to known satellite models. Nothing matched. NASA insisted it was space debris, a piece of thermal insulation. But others pointed to the object's size larger than a shuttle, with mass and density inconsistent with fabric. Some claim to detect infrared emissions not from reflected heat, but internal output. In forums and classified channels, a new wave of theories surged. But this wasn't the first time something strange had been caught watching from above. In 1963, astronaut Gordon Cooper allegedly saw a glowing green object approach his capsule while orbiting Earth. It moved against the backdrop of space, slowed, then vanished. The incident was never officially acknowledged, but whispers of internal transcripts circulated among researchers. Cooper later confirmed the sighting during interviews and never retracted it. In 1973, a Soviet satellite monitoring radio frequencies from the North Pole picked up what it described as a structured signal with cyclical modulation, originating not from Earth, but from orbit. Attempts to triangulate its source led to nothing. The signal disappeared. Across decades, amateur skywatchers reported similar observations. An object that moved in a polar orbit from north to south, unlike most satellites. It reflected sunlight in brief, sudden bursts. Sometimes, it appeared in photographs where no object should have been. Then, it vanished. No launch, no decay, no re-entry. Even more unsettling, the orbital path traced by observers matched the same arc again and again. It circled Earth every 104.5 minutes. Quiet, predictable, invisible to most systems. And still, no nation ever claimed it. The object doesn't broadcast like modern satellites. It doesn't blink or respond. But when certain signals are sent upward deliberate pulses, structured tones those who listen closely swear they've heard something echo back. A delay, a whisper, a repetition, like something patiently listening. The Black Knight defies classification. It has no serial number, no exhaust ports, no solar panels, and no visible antenna array. Its surface is uneven, part smooth, part jagged, almost like stone shaped into function. Observers describe it as both artificial and ancient, like technology born in a time that predates our concept of machines. When enhanced images from the STS-88 mission were analyzed, engineers noticed something disturbing. The object bore structural symmetry, as if constructed with intent, but using design logic unfamiliar to modern aerospace, not quite aerodynamic, not modular. And yet, it flies. Its orbit is polar, meaning it circles Earth from pole to pole rather than along the equator. This type of orbit wasn't used by any nation until the late 1960 Chet reports of the Black Knight trace back to the 1920s. That's where the real anomaly begins. If the object follows a stable polar orbit, it would require regular station-keeping corrections to avoid orbital decay. But no such adjustments have ever been observed. It simply moves perfectly, like clockwork. It doesn't fall, it doesn't burn, it endures. Some theorists believe it's a Monitora sentry placed in Earth's orbit thousands of years ago by an unknown intelligence. A technological artifact meant to observe humanity from afar, invisible in plain sight. They call it a bracelet of the gods. Others believe it's a relic, a long-dead satellite from a lost civilization, either ours or another's, still circling silently. But the most unsettling theory is this, that the Black Knight is not broadcasting, it's receiving, that it has waited centuries perhaps for something from us. A trigger, a signal, a key, and that the Arecibo message we sent in 1974 may not have been the first to try. The Black Knight occupies a strange space between science and myth. No government has acknowledged its existence. No agency claims to have launched it, and yet it has been seen, recorded, tracked, denied. Some believe it's a piece of forgotten human history, a relic of a prehistoric civilization wiped clean by time, whose final achievement was placing a sentinel into orbit. This theory hinges on the idea that humanity may have risen and fallen more than once. If so, the Black Knight is not alien, but a message to ourselves from a past we no longer remember. Others believe it's extraterrestrial, an Origina Watcher probe, seeded by an advanced intelligence to observe Earth's development from afar. It doesn't act. It only listens. It waits. And perhaps, if we trigger the right conditions, certain level of communication, technology, or aggression, it will respond. Some even suggest the Black Knight is alive in some sense, not organic, but conscious. A thinking machine bound to orbit, feeding on starlight and silence. Not a satellite, but a sentinel. Skeptics, of course, dismiss it all. They say it's space debris, a thermal blanket, a misidentified chunk of metal, a series of coincidences folded into a myth. They point to the limits of radar, the fallibility of photographs, the gaps in memory. But for every theory that seeks to explain it away, the same problem remains. No one has ever retrieved it. No mission has confirmed what it is. It continues to orbit, unclaimed, unstudied, unchallenged, which leaves us here on the surface, looking up at something older than our rockets, stranger than our science, and possibly smarter than we're willing to admit. And every time it passes overhead, silent and indifferent, it asks the same question without words. Are you ready yet? In the heart of Romania, there is a mountain range cloaked in fog and folklore. The Bucegi mountain steep, ancient and strangely symmetrical, have long been considered sacred. But in 2003, whispers began to surface. Not from hikers or monks, but from sources claiming access to military briefings. Reports spoke of a hidden chamber beneath the rockin' unnatural formation deep within the mountain, discovered by ground-penetrating radar. A structure that shouldn't exist. They said it wasn't made by humans, that it responded to energy fields, not tools, that it was sealed not with stone or steel but with vibration. Inside, they claimed, were devices that could project history, shift perception, even manipulate time itself. A holographic library from before history. The rumors spread fast, picked up by forums, conspiracy researchers, and alternative historians. And then, just as suddenly, silence. The Romanian government refused to comment. Access to the mountain tightened. Satellite images of the exact location began appearing, with strange blur pattern pixels distorted, as if airbrushed. Officially, nothing was found. Unofficially, something was buried, and someone didn't want it unsealed. So the question hangs like mist in the alpine air. Is there a gateway beneath Bucegi? And if so, what exactly does it open into? The Bucegi Mountains rise from central Romania, like the vertebrae of an ancient creature. Towering peaks, wind-carved cliffs, and dense pine forests stretch across a region steeped in Dacian myth and Orthodox mysticism. But in recent years, these hills have become known for something else. Secret buried beneath stone, shielded not just by nature, but by power. The core of the story began in 2003, when a team from the Romanian Intelligence Service, SRI, in coordination with the military, allegedly initiated a classified geological scan of the Bucegi Plateau, using satellite-borne ground-penetrating radar technology sourced, some say, through NATO partnerships. They detected a hollow space inside the mountain, not a cave, but a structure. A near-perfect tunnel descending vertically before leveling out, ending in a massive dome-shaped chamber. The geometry was not natural. The angles were too clean, the walls too smooth. But the most shocking element wasn't what they saw, it was what happened when they tried to enter. According to whistleblower accounts circulated through fringe military contacts and Romanian investigative reporters, the entrance was sealed by an energetic barrier, something that emitted a frequency capable of repelling matter. Equipment failed. Communications dropped. Attempts to force access triggered vibrations that rippled through the entire mountain range. Shortly after, representatives from the United States allegedly arrived, not through embassy channels, but via covert diplomatic lines. Meetings were held with Romania's Supreme Council of National Defense, and then the narrative stopped. No announcements, no denials, only silence. Since then, hikers report unusual patrols near the plateau. Satellite imagery on public services like Google Earth shows digital obfuscation, strange tiling artifacts where the anomaly was said to be. Rumors persist of a military cordon above the site, and locals speak in hushed tones of foreigners seen entering the mountains, but never returning the same way. There is no official acknowledgement that such a structure exists. No footage, no photos, but those who have researched the case point out one chilling detail. The Bucegi Formation lies on a direct geodetic line connecting the Giza Pyramids, Mount Kailash, and Easter Island 3 of Earth's most enduring ancient enigmas. Coincidence? Maybe, but if something truly is hidden inside that mountain, it was never meant to be found by accident. According to the account published in 2009 by Romanian author Radu Cinemar, based on testimony from an alleged intelligence operative known only as Cesar, the events that followed the discovery at Bucegi were unlike anything documented in modern history. After failed attempts to breach the energy barrier, the Romanian team reportedly found a way to tune the vibration of the mountain's entrance, lowering the frequency of the field. With assistance from foreign operatives, allegedly, U.S. Military Science Division's passage opened. What they found inside was not a tunnel, but a precision-engineered corridor, wide enough to accommodate 2 standing adults, illuminated by a diffused, sourceless light. The walls pulsed faintly, smooth and metallic, not like steel, but more like obsidian infused with circuitry. The corridor led to a massive underground chamber, now referred to in fringe circles as the Grand Gallery. Inside were 3 massive table-like structures, each over 8 feet tall, impossible to climb onto. Embedded within them were holographic consoles' interactive surfaces that activated upon human presence. These projections, the team claimed, showed Earth's biological history, scenes of extinct creatures, climatic shifts, even planetary alignments thousands of years in the past. One display allegedly showed the human DNA strand being overlaid with foreign markers, as if to suggest intervention. Another console, when activated, projected celestial star charts not from Earth's perspective, but from outside our solar system. At the far end of the gallery was a tall doorway, arched and sealed. Behind it, according to those briefed, was a chamber referred to only as the vault. Inside, unknown. When approached, the doorway resisted all probes. Not magnetically, not mechanically, but as if sensing intent responding to consciousness itself. That's when, according to the account, things escalated. Foreign agencies pushed for control. Diplomatic tensions spiked. A temporary stand-down was brokered between Romania and outside actors allegedly, the U.S. in exchange for silence. Romania would suppress the discovery. The existence of the chamber would never be made public. Research would continue quietly, jointly, and indefinitely. There are no confirmed documents, no official press releases, but from 2003 onward, all aerial imaging of the site was digitally altered. The military presence around Bucegi increased, and all formal geological expeditions in that region ceased. So what exactly happened beneath that mountain? And more importantly, what didn't they show us? The objective, it can be called, that wasn't a single artifact, but a complex system, an environment, a library, and perhaps a machine. Within the Grand Gallery, the structures discovered were said to be monolithic console constructed in pieces, but grown or fused into shape. Each one appeared tailored for beings much larger than humans, standing upright at a height over 3 meters. Their surfaces were smooth but not featureless, covered in geometric inlays that responded to proximity. When approached, the consoles projected holographic data streams directly into the air. Not screens, not buttons, but living, shifting visuals. One console allegedly displayed cross-sections of the human body, highlighting organs, nerves, and cellular structures with strange annotation symbols not belonging to any known language, yet universally organized, as if meant for teaching. Others showed evolutionary sequences, not as theory, but as editable Model S scenes that could be paused, reversed, accelerated. It was as though the machines were capable of manipulating biohistorical timelines. Even stranger was the room's ambient effect. Those inside reported altered perception of time minutes felt like hours, or vice versa. Heart rates slowed, thought patterns changed. Some described sensations of information downloading directly into their minds. Dreams, languages, memories that didn't belong to them. And then, the vault. Beyond the main console stood a sealed doorway, arched and cold to the touch. No visible lock, no mechanical seal, but no one could pass. Instruments failed. Light bent near its edges. Some researchers reported hearing tonal frequencies low, harmonic vibrations as they stood before it, as if the structure was singing, faintly, waiting for a harmonic key. Whatever lies beyond the vault, they believed, wasn't just knowledge, it was mechanism, a device, perhaps a portal, perhaps something else entirely. Ancient alien technology? Evidence of a lost terrestrial civilization? Or a construct beyond both time and species left as a message or a test? Whatever the truth, the implication was the same. This chamber wasn't meant to be found by accident, and what lay sealed within it was never meant for all to see. Theories about the Bucegi structure fall into two camps: those who think it's ancient technology and those who believe it was never meant to be found. Some claim the site is evidence of a pre-human civilization, one that reached technological heights far beyond ours and was wiped from memory by cataclysm or design. The alignment of the chamber with global ley lines the connection to the pyramids of Giza, to Mount Kailash, to Easter Island, suggests intentional placement, that the structure is part of a larger grid, a network, possibly a planetary archive. Others believe it's not terrestrial at all, that it was left by non-human intelligence, not as a gift, but as a monitoring station, something that records species, experiments, timelines. The holographic consoles, they argue, were tools not of education, but of observation. As if we were never the ones watching, we were the data. The more esoteric voices suggest something even stranger, that the vault beneath the Bucegi Mountains isn't just a sealed chamber, but a gate in Tima corridor through dimensions. That what stands behind that door isn't an artifact, but a timeline, one that leads somewhere else. Romanian officials have never commented on the rumors. The government remains silent. NATO has never acknowledged involvement. But from 2003 onward, access to the Bucegi Plateau became restricted. Hikers speak of new barriers, unmarked vehicles, personnel who speak in clipped English rather than Romanian. The story remains unofficial, unverified. And yet, the satellite imagery remains blurred. The military presence persists. And those who attempt to dig deep are academics, researchers, even journalists report sudden obstacles, revoked permissions, and vanishing contacts. If the Bucegi chamber is a myth, it is one maintained with remarkable precision. If it is real, it may be the most carefully hidden discovery of the 21st century. And if the vault ever opens, it may not just change our understanding of history, it may rewrite it entirely. In 2011, a spacecraft flying through the shadow of Saturn heard something it wasn't supposed to. The Cassini probe, launched in 1997, had already rewritten what we knew about the outer solar system rings with structure. Storms that raged for decades, and small frozen moons that weren't dead, but alive with energy. One of them was Enceladus, world of ice, smaller than the state of Arizona, but brimming with possibility. Cassini flew low over the surface, just 50 kilometers above the moon's icy crust. It passed through a plumia jet of vapor erupting from a fracture in the surface. Below that ice, scientists believed, was a liquid ocean, warmed by tidal forces from Saturn's gravity. It was one of the most promising places for life beyond Earth. But what no one expected was a sound. The probe's instruments recorded radio waves brief, pulsed and repeating. The signal wasn't random. It rose in tone, it dropped, it modulated. And when translated into audio frequencies, it didn't sound like static or interference or plasma storms. It sounded structured. For years, NASA never mentioned the recording publicly. Only through archived mission data dissected by independent researchers did the waveform analysis surface. Some claimed it was artificial. Some said it was natural resonance, misunderstood. But one detail refused to fade. The transmission didn't come from the moon's surface. It came from beneath the ice. And for a brief moment, Cassini wasn't just watching Enceladus. It was being watched back. Enceladus orbits Saturn at a distance of nearly 240,000 kilometers, just outside the planet's massive E-ring. It's a small moon, only about 500 kilometers across, but it holds one of the most fascinating secrets in the solar system: a subsurface ocean hidden beneath a crust of fractured ice. In 2005, NASA's Cassini spacecraft made its first close flyby. What it saw shattered expectations geysers erupting from the southern pole, spraying water vapor, salt, and organic molecules into space. These jets weren't the result of random geology. They were persistent, patterned, and hot, suggesting not just heat, but energy, perhaps even chemistry capable of sustaining life. By 2011, Cassini's mission had evolved into a surgical series of flybys, skimming close to the geysers, collecting dust and gas, mapping magnetic anomalies. That's when one of the orbiter's instruments, the Radio and Plasma Wave Science, RPWS, detector picked up something strange. It wasn't the first time RPWS had registered signals. Space is full of plasma bursts, lightning waves, and electromagnetic noise. But this one was different. It was narrowband, repeating, regular. As Cassini passed through a plume, the RPWS logs recorded a modulating signal, something that rose and fell in deliberate patterns. Not noise, not random, and crucially, the signal was not consistent with known plasma activity in that region. The Cassini team flagged the data and moved on. It was cataloged as an anomaly. But in the years that followed, independent researchers began combing through raw mission archives, publicly available but largely unexplored. It was here, in the overlooked telemetry, that the signal re-emerged. When slowed down and translated into audible range, the waveform produced a sound that no one could easily explain. Not music, not static, but cadence. And the coordinates? Exactly above the tiger stripes. The four main fractures where Enceladus vents its ocean to space. If this was nature, why did it sound like language? As Cassini passed directly over the tiger stripes, the massive fissures that cut across Enceladus's south polete entered a dense vapor plume, thick with water, ice, and organic particles. Instruments began firing. Spectrometers captured data. Dust analyzers mapped composition. But the radio wave sensor, the RPWS, recorded something else entirely. The transmission lasted just under 12 seconds. Short bursts, rising tones, pauses, then a lower frequency. The waveform resembled a sequence, not a scatter. It pulsed in intervals, 3 short, 2 long, 3 short again, repeating. At first, mission scientists labeled it an electrical anomaly, perhaps static discharges from friction within the plume. But when analysts attempted to recreate the signal using known plasma models, nothing matched. More disturbing was where the signal peaked. It didn't originate in the vapor cloud above. It resonated upward from beneath the ice shell more than 30 kilometers deep. And it didn't repeat in other flybys. Only that one pass, one message. When researchers reconstructed the signal using audio synthesis, translating frequency into sound, they heard something they couldn't explain. Not voice, not melody, but something rhythmic, mechanical, and intentional. It began as a hum, then broke into staggered beats, like a coded rhythm, echoing under ice. A wave of sound that seemed less like a call, and more like a response. Online, forums lit up. Some claimed it was evidence of intelligent life beneath the ocean of Enceladus. Others warned that interpreting anomalies through a human lens invites false patterns. Still, the signal's structure aids spacing, rise and fall, and single-point origin refused to be dismissed. NASA never issued a formal statement, and yet, Cassini's mission protocol changed. Future flybys avoided direct passes through the deepest plumes. No further scans for similar signals were prioritized. Unofficially, internal documents suggest caution, a phrase repeated in logs obtained through FOIA requests. Pattern integrity high, origin indeterminate. No further action recommended. No confirmation, no denial, just withdrawal. And the signal? It has never been heard again. There was no probe to recover, no craft to photograph, only a signal brief, faint but structured, a ripple of radio energy, emerging from beneath a frozen moon, carrying with it a signature of something more than geology. To scientists, a signal is data, but this one behaved like something else, an artifact made of frequency. When processed, its waveforms showed symmetry peaks and troughs that mirrored each other, suggesting not natural chaos, but design. The spacing between bursts aligned with mathematical ratios, close to the Fibonacci sequence. The rise and fall of the frequency formed a spiral when plotted over time. Not random, not static, something encoded. Spectral analysis revealed that the signal contained sideband modulations interference patterns, suggesting it passed through multiple mediums, possibly liquid, before hitting Cassini's detectors. That aligned with Enceladus's suspected subsurface ocean, a salty, high-pressure sea beneath 30 kilometers of ice, kept warm by tidal friction from Saturn's massive gravity, a place where water, heat, and organic material coexist. But here was the question that no algorithm could answer. Why was the signal emitted at all? It didn't match the electromagnetic behavior of volcanic or cryogeological events. It didn't resemble auroral activity or charged particles in Saturn's magnetosphere. And it didn't appear in any other pass. One time, one message. If it was artificial, it wasn't accidental. Some theorists believe the signal was a Pingan acoustic handshake, broadcast upward through liquid and ice in response to Cassini's approach. A way of saying we see you without revealing more. Others think it was a Leica fragment of something deeper, possibly a machine or a process far older than the moon itself. A rhythm left behind, a memory still running. The boldest interpretation suggests something more sentient, that Cassini triggered attention, that for one moment, something beneath Enceladus looked up and answered. The object, then, is not metal or glass. It is intent, frozen, beneath miles of ice, waiting, not asleep, not alive, but listening. For some, the signal was nothing more than a glitch radio noise shaped by coincidence and interpreted through human bias. The universe is full of patterns, they say. That doesn't make them messages. That doesn't make them aware. But for others, the Enceladus transmission sits at the very edge of plausibility. A whisper from beneath the ice, heard once and never again. They point to how quickly it was dismissed, how no follow-up flybys tried to replicate the event, how later data packets were quietly redacted or buried in technical language. The signal's timing, too, raises questions. Cassini's approach angle was unique on that pass. Its instruments were powered differently, and just before it entered the plume, its magnetometer registered a sharp spike, indicating an electromagnetic field that wasn't part of Saturn's regular system. That field vanished when the signal stopped. Some believe the sound was a broadcast not directed at Earth, but triggered by Cassini's proximity. A reflex, a test, or a warning. Others believe it was an echo, something repeating a transmission from deep beneath the crust. A fragment of a larger communication cycle, one that operates on timelines we don't understand. Perhaps Cassini simply arrived too earlier, too late. There are also those who connect the signal to ancient myths. The idea that gods once lived in the heavens, beneath ice, in oceans of stars. That the outer planets were not empty but sacred, listening. But the simplest theory remains the most haunting. What we heard wasn't directed at us. It was sent out into the dark in a cycle, or by accident, and for one brief moment, we passed through its path. A shadow in orbit, a flyby, a sound not meant for human ears. Cassini continued its mission for 6 more years. It never heard the signal again. And when it finally plunged into Saturn's atmosphere in 2017, it took everything it had with it, including whatever it might have learned. And so, the voice from Enceladus remains unconfirmed, unacknowledged, alone. If it was a message, then whoever sent it is still waiting for a reply.